Hi everyone, this is An from Nan's Tutoring and welcome back to the Nan's Tutoring channel. So in the previous video, we have already learned about the compound interest formula and how to use it to calculate real-life examples. But how does the formula work mathematically? Well, you're in luck because today we are going to learn how to derive the formula of compound interest. Now let's take a look at the variables here. A is our desired value, which is the future value of the investment. P is what we start with, the principal amount. R stands for annual interest rate. N stands for the number of times interest is compounded per year. Now that number N really depends on T, which stands for terms. Now term means how many years, months, fortnights, or even days or weeks the interest is compounded. Now with these variables, we can use the listing method to derive the formula for each month. If, say, we have a saving account and it is compounded monthly. So what do you think would happen with the first month? Well, I think that at the first month, we would definitely still have our principal, but we'll also earn a bit of interest. Now that is the basis of, all kinds of interest formula. You always have your principal and then you gain some interest on top of it. It's just that compound interest is a bit different from simple interest. Now, principal would definitely be P. Interest is an interesting one, pun intended. The interest is calculated by the principal amount multiplied by the annual interest rate, R, divided equally by the number of times interest is compounded per year, which is N. There we have it, P plus P times R to the over N. Now, seeing that we have P on both terms, we can actually simplify this number sentence by putting P to one side of the expression and then multiply, put a pair of bracket there. Now what goes into here? Well, glad you've asked. P is essentially 1 times P. So if I taken P outside the bracket, I would have only 1 left in the bracket. And then on the second term, because I've put P onto the outside, I would have R over N left. So there we have it. P times bracket 1 plus R over N. Now just to make it a bit more simpler. And there we go. Alright, so what happens on the second month? Well, again, I'm glad you've asked. Basically, it is still principal plus interest gained. So the essence doesn't change. It's just principal added with the interest you're going to gain for that month. However, keep in mind that your principal has actually changed. Alright? So let's say if you started off with $100 for the first month, by the end of that first month, you would have earned a bit more. It would be more than 100. So whatever you were left with for the first month, and in our case is this number, would be what you start with for the second month. So there we go, we have a different principal now. And since we have a different principal, our interest would also be different. So instead of just P, this time it would be P times, and in bracket, 1 plus R over N. So that whole thing now is our new principal multiplied by R over N. Okay, and again, we can still simplify this. Now, how? Well, again, I'm glad that you've asked so many interesting questions. Now see, this whole unit here. I've repeated, so that means that I could actually leave them on one side of the expression. Okay, let's put a multiplication sign there, and now in the bracket, still this whole thing is just times 1, so that would be 1 plus r over n, because again, there's only this and this left. Now, let's take a look at this whole thing. Let's take a look at this whole thing here. Is it not just p times 1 plus r over n and times 1 plus r over n? That means there are two identical numbers being multiplied together. If you multiply something by itself once more, that is essentially squaring it. So that would make p times with, and then bracket 1 plus r over n to the power of 2. So far so good. Let's move on. For the third month, and as I've said before, the rules do not change. It is still just principal added with some interest that you have gained. And whatever you were left with in the previous month would be what you start with for the next month. So this time we start with p and then times in bracket 1 plus r over n to the power of 2. That's your principal. And then of course your interest will be changed too, because now your p is different. Okay, so let's write it out. We've got this whole thing here, and then once more times with r over n. And of course, we see that this whole thing here, they are identical, so we could leave them to one side of the expression. And then and voila. So, seems to forget this. There we go. Now let's take a look at this. You are multiplying p with, well, that's 2 of 1 plus r over n, and then 1 of 1 plus r over n. So all in all, you actually have 3 1 plus r over n, and since they are being multiplied together, that is essentially to the power of 3. If this keeps going, eventually we are going to reach an undetermined number of months. Let's say that is month n. Well, my guess is the formula would happen this way. We have p 1 plus r over n to the power of n, which is the number of times interest is compounded per year. If this is, say, a saving for 1 year, then this formula would make sense. However, if it is more than 2 years or 2 years or more, what will happen? Well, we would have to double the number of times interest is compounded per year, which is n times 2, or just 2n, right? So instead of just this, instead of just this, all right, we would actually have this. Say 3 years. That would be n times 3, or 3n. And then if it keeps going for a t number of years, the formula would turn out that you would multiply n with whatever that t is, and your formula would be a equal p bracket 1 plus r over n to the power of n times t. And that's how we got the formula. Alright, thank you for watching and stay tuned. Remember to like and subscribe. Ta-da!